This week, Parshat Shlach, the story of the 12 spies that enter the land of Israel. 10 of them come back with negative reports. 2 have positive reports. That's Joshua and Caleb. The Israelites as a collective believe the negative reports, and they're very upset with Moshe and with God. How could you do this? It's not going to go well for us. God gets very angry and says that for the 40 days that the spies were in the land, there will be a 40-year, 40 to 40 period now that the Israelites will be punished by having to wander the desert before the next generation will finally be ready to enter the land of Israel. At the conclusion of the story, this is Numbers chapter 14, verses 36-37. The 10 spies that spoke negatively of the land, we learned that they die in a plague. V'yamutu ha'anashim motzi'ei dibat ha'aretz ra'ah. The people died, those that spoke poorly about the land, b'magefa lifnei Hashem, in a plague in front of God. God sent a plague, killed those 10 people. Interesting midrash found in the Talmud Masechet Sota, Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, Sota 35a. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, Shemetu mita mishuneh. They died a very specific kind of death. It wasn't a normal death. It was a particular death that was related to their sin of speaking ill of the land. How did they die? Ve'ezuhi. Darash Rabbi Shila says, this is a little graphic, Shenish tarbev lishonam v'nafal al tiburam. Their tongues fell out, came out, sort of protruded out of their mouths down to their belly buttons. Vahayu tolaim yotzot milishonam, and maggots emerged from their tongues, v'nichnasot b'tiburam, and went into their belly buttons. Umi tiburam l'lishonam, and maggots came out of their belly buttons and went into their tongues and into their mouths. That's one opinion, but that's how they died. Terrible, very graphic, horrible, horrifying sounding death. Tongues protruding to belly buttons and maggots. There's another opinion. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar be'askara metu. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, no, they died with something called askara. That's been related maybe to, some people think maybe that's a form of diphtheria, but it's something in the throat which blocks breathing. Famously, the story of those that died of Rabbi Akiva's students, there's an opinion they too died of askara, if you're familiar with that story. So, what's going on here? The Torah Temimah in his comment notes that this is an example of midah keneged midah. I should know it's not just the Torah Temimah in the 19th century, but already Rashi in the 11th century says this is midah keneged midah, which means tit for tat, the heavenly idea that God punishes people or rewards people based on their actions. So what does that mean here? So the first level is easily understood. That what? Shenenshu midah keneged midah ba'ota aver shehotziu hadibor behalashon. The tit for tat here is that what did the spies do? They sinned with their mouths. They spoke ill of the land. So something in their mouth, that which produces words, namely their tongues. So the story that their tongues protrude out, they're punished through their tongues because that's how they sinned. But that only answers half the story, of course, because why? It's not just about their tongues, but multiple times the midrash noted that their tongues went down to their belly buttons, which is a much stranger aspect here. So now the Torah Temimah is going to try and explain what is the significance, what is the symbolism of the belly buttons. And he says, I think, a very interesting and poignant answer. V'hayetziyah l'tiburam, and what does it mean that the tongue went down to the belly button? Yesh lomar, one could say, dahave gam kain midah keneged midah. This was also an example of tit for tat. Somehow the belly button, they sinned with their belly buttons or something. What is it going to mean? Mipnei shehotziu diba al haaretz. They spoke ill of the land, and the land is shehi B'tibor ha'olam. Fascinating idea. That the land of Israel is located at the belly button of the world. What does that mean? I would say the center of the world. And he quotes and notes that the prophet Ezekiel, Yechezkel, chapter 38, describes the inhabitants of the land of Israel as Yoshvei al Tibor Haaretz, those who live on or in the belly button of the world, which I think we can read as the centerpiece of the world. So, if the spies spoke ill of the land, symbolically, we could say they were speaking ill of the centerpiece, the belly button, the Tibor. So now we understand why, according to this midrashic idea, their death would come through something having to do with their belly buttons. And he concludes by saying, according to the second opinion of the midrash, which was Rabbi Yitzchak, that they died through askara, through this throat condition, maybe diphtheria. That is related to an idea found elsewhere in the Talmud, that askara specifically comes as a result of the sin of lashon hara, of speaking ill of others, either other people or here of the land. So that too would be a form of midah keneged midah, divine retribution, tit for tat. This is not the prettiest midrash. It's a difficult concept, certainly a concept that these people were killed for their responses, their emotional responses to the lands, that they were being honest, but understood typically in our tradition that they did not have enough faith in God or in Moshe, who had said, you're going to be able to do this. Interesting discussions to have, but I was intrigued by the symbolism of the tongue and the belly button and what these both mean. Interesting to note that other commentators say that the belly button symbolism can mean something else, specifically the notion that there's a Gemara elsewhere in Masechet Sotah that the belly button is where in utero humans are, it's the first part of our creation, of course, related to the umbilical cord going to the belly button, that the Chazal thought on some level that that's where creation of the human begins. So it's the belly button there isn't about Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, but rather about the centrality of man in our beginnings. We had sinned to our beginnings. The different places we could take this. Pleasure learning with you as always. More next week.